Carolyn Rivera competed on the 30th season of Worlds Apart, where she finished in second place. Thrust into game mode from day one as she fought for survival and found an idol at the very beginning, her strong strategy, great social skills and challenge dominance brought her all the way to the end of the game, where she was unlucky not to get more votes at the final Tribal Council and finish as the season's co-runner-up. I spoke to Carolyn about why she turned against Max and Shirin after initially siding with them early in the game, what really happened at the infamous auction during her season, as well as talking about one of the worst nights of her life on finale night and dishing the dirt on any deal she made with Rodney about giving up a reward. Carolyn, welcome to Survivor Oz.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here, Carolyn, because it's no doubt been a whirlwind adventure, this trip on Survivor, and it's, now been a couple of months since it's finished, so I could imagine you're just slowly getting back into real life now, aren't you?
I am. It was a little bit crazy, but now back to the real world.
Because would it have been about this time last year that you would have been out there filming, or have we just kind of... no, we're approaching it now. August, I'm looking at here, it was it?
Yeah, we're probably like 2 weeks away from getting on the plane and going to Nicaragua.
Wow. So again, it just goes like that, doesn't it? I could imagine when you initially get cast, it's sort of a waiting period, you're all excited, and now it's nearly a year since you were even on that plane.
It was, yes. It was a whirlwind of a ride, but fun nevertheless.
Were you going into it a massive fan of the show? I mean, did you apply to be on the show, or were you recruited?
I actually applied for like 4 years to be on the show, so... yeah, it took me a little bit of time, but perseverance gets you on, I guess.
Definitely. So is this something that you've been wanting to do for a while? Was there a sort of a kicker that made you eventually apply for it when you first did apply?
Actually, I've been watching the show since season 1. Big fan of the show. But, my kids were still busy, and I had the mom duty. So I basically waited until they were out and my last one was off to college, and that's when I started applying.
Did you get close to any of the seasons that you applied for, or was Worlds Apart the first one that you ever got that call back for?
I got a call back every year. I just never made it to the face-to-face finals.
Wow. So I guess it must get frustrating after a while to keep getting called back and then not making it to that next step.
I know. It was a little bit trying. You think you're there, and you just don't know whether you are or you aren't, but can never give up.
So when you get that phone call to say you're there, and then eventually the confirmation that you're going to be on the season, I mean, do you go out and celebrate? Do you take a few moments to yourself and like, yes, finally I'll get to do what I've been trying to do?
Well, no, I don't think I really celebrated because... anything can happen. So until I was actually on the plane and heading to Nicaragua, that's kind of when I knew it was actually happening.
It's a good way of looking at it. Did you go in with any strategy, sort of any plans of how you might play the game?
Well, I mean, everyone goes in thinking they're going to do some certain things, but it's a different ball game when you get out there. You've got to work with the people that you're with. You've got to figure out the scenarios. You got to figure out kind of who's who. And, I knew I wasn't going to be the bossy one to get voted out, because you're hoarding food or, telling people how to build a shelter. But other than that, you kind of just wait and see.
And I guess also when you're on that plane over there and you're in lockdown before you actually start playing the game, you're around the people that you're going to be playing with, of course, but you can't talk to them. So were there anybody that stood out in those initial phases that you were keeping an eye on, sort of reading their body language, that you were thinking they're a good person to work with, they're a good person to avoid?
I didn't know really about avoiding. I didn't figure out who I was going to avoid, but I did figure that I would be working with Rodney and Will and Kelly.
Right. What was particular about those that sort of drew you to them when you were looking at them?
I don't know. When you're sitting there and you're staring, you figure out the smiles. you make the eye contact, but you're not allowed to do anything more. So I don't know. Those people just kind of, stuck to me at that point.
And of course, you didn't end up on a tribe with any of them. So
No, I know. I was like, wait, what is going on here? All my eye contact people are not even on my tribe.
Are you working out at that point too? Because you're around 17 other people, so I guess you could either think, hey, we could be on 2 tribes of 9, 3 tribes of 6, hey, there could be 2 returning players that they're about to thrust upon us. Was there any sort of particular way you were thinking at that point what it would be divided by?
I actually thought it was going to be 3 tribes. In fact, I said it right from the get-go, only because there's never really 3 older women. And since I saw myself and 2 others, I figured, all right, there's got to be one of us on each tribe.
It's an interesting way of looking at it, because I guess with sort of the older women, as I guess you put, I'm trying to say that nicely too, Carolyn, that it's sort of, in modern Survivor, we don't get a wide spread of ages, I guess, as we used to. So that automatically, I'm sure, going into the game, makes you feel a bit that you could be targeted against for that reason.
Oh, absolutely. The older women have a target on their back from day one. If you lose your first challenge, the first people to go are the older women. So you've got to figure out your strategy to stay in the game.
And going into it then, when you get the 3 tribes split and it's announced that it is white collar, no collar, blue collar, and you're on white collar, did you think that that was going to affect you differently, given that white collars maybe look at things slightly different to, say, a blue collar or a no collar person?
Well, it was very interesting when, we got to the mats and he outlined kind of the theory of what it was. I mean, everyone on our tribe was kind of, well, not everybody, but most people were dressed, well, I guess 50% of our tribe was dressed in, like, work, corporate America kind of attire, and then the other 3 people were, I don't know how they got into their white-collar dress, but that was definitely not white-collar dress. But, yeah, I mean, I think that white-collar had a stigma right from the get-go.
Did you like the twist, sort of, when you first heard it, or did you think, ooh, this maybe isn't a very good idea?
Oh, I thought it was a great twist, and a very interesting way to kind of separate. So I thought it was really good.
And I was speaking to Dan the other day about this, and I feel it was a season where the theme really stayed with the season for a long time. I mean, we see a lot of the time, say, with Brain, Brawn, Beauty, that it was almost forgotten after a couple of episodes, whereas this season, I mean, really into the merge, you would argue that you were still hearing, hey, I'm blue collar, hey, I'm white collar, and I guess I like the fact that a theme stayed with the season for as long as it did on your season.
Oh, yeah, I think so, too. I think it was a good theme. I think it broke down the tribes very definitively, and I think the players on each of the tribes kind of fit nicely into their tribe. So when the merge happened, you automatically still had those connections, and you can see how people kind of thought about things differently. So it was very interesting.
When the announcement is made that you've got to have the person volunteer pretty much, or you've got to have that person come out straight away, we saw a bit of a discussion being held by you guys, and Joaquin, of course, was eventually stepped up with that. What was being said in that discussion, and was that a longer discussion than we saw on TV, or did that basically go for about as long as it went for?
I think it went for as long as it went for. I was not stepping up. There was no way in hell that I was going to raise my hand for that. And Joaquin kind of sort of got thrown into it. Interestingly enough, what we found out later was he didn't really know anything about the game. So it was kind of like perfect for that to happen. And then, So volunteered. I think she volunteered because, they were kind of like almost the same age. She felt like probably she could work with him. So that was a good twist to it.
It was interesting with So, of course, because, she was meant to be on the previous season, and then she's come out here. Did she mention that when she's playing, that she was meant to be on the previous season?
No, not at all.
Right, so I guess then it's a bit of a shock to find that out afterwards, I guess?
Oh, yeah. I had no idea that she was on the season before, and, that she then got recast for this season, so, no. It was a definite shock when I found that out.
Completely different situations if she was out there in San Juan del Sur with a sister, so who knows how it played out. She probably wouldn't have been first boot. Who knows?
I know. Things happen for a reason, though. I believe that, so...
Very true. When they came back to the camp, and we obviously saw the whole situation with them, stretching the truth a little bit in how they perceived it. Again, sort of what we saw compared to the discussion that was back on the camp, was there anybody who believed them when they told their sort of little lie in regards to the rice and the corn?
No. I mean, we've all been watching the seasons since season 1. Mm-hmm. There is no way that any one of us believed a word that they were saying, which was pretty hilarious. Because I think they honestly believed that we did. And so, it was just like, are they kidding me? Really? But, it was funny. Definitely.
Made for good watching. And I guess also when the challenge is lost, and you were sort of mentioning how you're going to be automatically targeted. It helps your cause. It clearly helped your cause because it's, I guess, then a good way of putting all the heat on So rather than them coming after you.
Exactly. I mean, on day 2, we were still struggling to get fire. I was working hard in camp. At the challenge, we didn't lose the challenge because of anything that I did. Mm-hmm. So, I used that to my advantage to kind of get the other people along the way thinking, yeah, you're right. Why would we target Carolyn? She didn't really do anything. Just because she's the older woman doesn't really make sense. So, but I wasn't 100% secure until I got Tyler in the loop, because I knew I had Shireen and Max on my side, but I didn't have Tyler yet, and he was still wishy-washy. And so when I lured him in with the idol, it kind of secured my fate.
And was that the start, I guess, of your friendship with Tyler as well? And who, I guess, as well, with that question, were the people that you felt you really bonded with from the get-go in those first opening days?
Well, in the opening days, interestingly enough, I felt very close to Shireen and Max. But as the days went on, Max and Shireen would only talk to each other. And Max didn't even talk to me. If he wanted to say something, he would tell Shireen, and then Shireen would come and tell me. And I was like, what? That's not the way I work. So and honestly, I did want to align with Tyler right from the get-go, but he wasn't ready to make any kind of commitments until like day 3. And so on day 3, when I approached him, told him about the idol, secured him on my side, the tables kind of turned a little bit, where I felt like Shireen was more close to Max than to me, even though she was telling me that she was closer to me. The actions weren't really there. So I felt closer to Tyler, and I actually, even though Joaquin and I didn't talk till probably day 4, Joaquin and I got really close, and I felt very close to Tyler and Joaquin at that point.
Right. So what was it about Joaquin that you didn't talk to day 4? Is that because he sort of was bonding more so with So at that point and didn't really have that opportunity?
It was all about So at that point, yeah.
Right.
He really didn't bond with anybody else except for So.
Right.
At that point.
And what was So like, I guess, from what we didn't get to see? I mean, we saw a bit of her, of course, in that first episode, but was she somebody that you feel, had she lasted a little bit longer, could have, made it deep into the game?
I think if So wasn't so hardcore on the beginning, at the first couple of days, and I think she was playing all the sides against each other. That was, I think, her downfall. Interestingly enough, So and I are very, very close friends right now. So,
Great.
If we were going to play now, it would be a whole different ball game. But it just wasn't meant to be at that point.
She's doing well with Malcolm, I believe, as well. So
yes, yes, she is.
A lot of people would say she won the game anyway. So
exactly.
Now, in terms of the Idol, how long was the process to actually look for it? And was it surprising that So or Joaquin didn't find it and you found it without a clue?
I went looking around, and I've watched every season, so I kind of know what to look for, or I thought I did. And honestly, I went out looking for bamboo, and I saw this tree, and I was like, wow, that tree is like screaming Idol to me. And so I was searching around, and I found it in the tree.
Great feeling too, no doubt.
Oh my God, I was so excited. Because I had told my kids before I left, and my husband, and I was like, listen, I don't know why the old people, the ladies, they don't look for the Idol, but I am not going to be that person. I am searching for that Idol, and I'm going to find it.
And I do believe that you hold the record for longest time between finding it and playing it. So in order to find it basically in episode 1 on day 2 or 3, whatever day it was, and then to play it, the time you did, I guess you find an Idol, and particularly in your situation early on where you're being targeted, you're not anticipating that you're not going to be actually playing that Idol basically for another month.
Right. I know, it was crazy. It just worked out really well, and I didn't really bring the Idol to tribal council all the time. I think I only brought it twice.
Wow. It must be an interesting feeling with it, because we see a lot more people now going through people's bags. I mean, we saw that, of course, on your season with Tyler. So in that aspect too, is there more of a case of you've really got to find a way of hiding it more so people don't just stumble across it in your bag?
Oh yeah, I would never keep it in the bag. That's just like not smart. It never even got close to my bag unless I was taking it to tribal council. So it was. I was panicking when I had to kind of hide it, because the first place I hid it so far away from camp, because I was just running, because I didn't want anyone to see me. And then I'm like, okay, that's going to be so obvious to get it. So when everyone was sleeping at night, I went out and started looking for it at night. I couldn't find it. So then I had to go the next day and get it. And then I brought it closer to camp so that I could sneak away, get it if I needed to, but nobody would suspect.
Right. So nobody cottoned on to you going to look for where you've actually hidden it?
No. Interestingly enough, everybody thought that I was clueless. And because I found it pretty quickly, and everyone was searching for it for such a long time, so I went searching with them, and then I was making up stories like, all you guys are doing is fighting over this stupid Idol. You've got to stop looking for it because it's only going to break up our team, and, just going on and on about that. Everyone was like, she's so dumb. She's not even looking for the Idol. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, that's because I already have it.
That's awesome. And I guess too, Tyler was the only person then that you told in the entire game that you had the Idol?
Yep.
So it's amazing to have that as well, because a lot of people will say don't tell anyone, or people play it differently, of course, how you have an Idol, and clearly in your case though it worked to help get somebody on side to help save you in the game, because at the end of the day you found an Idol, but you don't want to be that first person voted out with an Idol in your... You don't want to be Garrett, essentially.
Exactly. Exactly. And, I struggled on that first show whether or not to play the idol.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did one last look at Tyler, and I was like, okay, God, please let this go the right way, because I felt like, all right, I'm going to trust him. And it worked, but, lucky it wasn't a blind side for me.
Very much so. And that first episode, Carolyn, 13 confessionals, that is a record. That is a record in the history of Survivor to have the most confessionals in an opening episode. I guess you go into any episode not knowing how much airtime you're going to get, but could you anticipate that you were going to get as much airtime in that premiere that you did?
Oh, no, I had no idea. I mean, I knew that I was a strong player throughout the game, obviously, because I knew where I ended up. But, I didn't know. I mean, I came out so strong in that first episode, and then they cut me out for like 4 episodes. And then I was like, what was the point of that? There was so much other stuff to have happen. But, with 3 tribes, they try and get a lot more people coverage. And so it's a little bit, more difficult to get airtime. And then when you have so many characters in one season, the big characters are going to take the airtime.
I'd love to know, sort of in that stretch where, as you mentioned, you didn't get a whole lot of screen time. I can imagine in this period we saw a lot of Shireen with her, the way she was around camp, and Max, because eventually that would lead to their ultimate downfalls. With Shireen, how was she around camp in terms of, quote, being annoying and sort of the way she often was talked about? Because I feel there were moments of Shireen that we saw how her personality was, but I guess in terms of her being annoying, was she as bad as some people seem to make her out to be?
Well, Shireen's eccentric, right? So, and she's nonstop talking. So, when you are with people for 24 hours a day, some people can tolerate more than others. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't that Max and Shireen just would do it so much together, I think that's where the downfall was. Because I think if you separate them, they're much better apart than they were together.
Mm-hmm.
And, there were times where she was following Max so much that we were just like, what is going on here? Just stop it already, So some of those things were a little bit crazy, but, Shireen's a good friend of mine now. So, you just have to, I think what Survivor did teach me is that you've got to be a little bit more tolerant of differences, because not everyone is going to be like you.
It's a very good way of looking at it. Was their bond down to the fact that they were just such super fans of this game?
Yeah. I think the bond was that they could really recite any part of any season and know everything about it. And I've watched every season, but I mean, I can't even remember the top 2 in every season, So it's just a different kind of a super fan. And
that ultimately, I mean, particularly with Max, I mean, that really seemed to be what, at that point when he was voted out, was the reason. Was that a key reason? Was there more to Max being targeted and eliminated when he did go after the switch?
So I was responsible for that. Because Max would drive me crazy. The fact that he just never would talk to me. He's supposed to be in my alliance. And the only one he would talk to was Shireen or sometimes the guys. And so I just felt like it was on day 4. I was passing by, Shireen and Max were talking, and I heard him say to her, that was a triple blindside last night. And I was furious. I was like, oh, really? A triple blindside? So that means that I wasn't in on it. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, okay, now I know where I stand, and I've got to, have that in the back of my mind and then make some adjustments going forward.
Wow. It's incredible to see that, and it's interesting with Max because he was my pre-season pick to win. I think he was a few people's pre-season's pick to win. Because I mean, as most people know, Max was well known in the Survivor community before he went on the show, so of course he was going to have that perception. But it's just that the old saying about if you can't do something, you teach. So do you feel that goes down to Max? And no disrespect to Max, of course.
Yeah, I mean, Max is a great guy. It's just he didn't play a good game.
Which I guess, is it surprising then that he gets put on the ballot to come back second? Again, I'm not trying to shit all over Max here, but I'm just sort of wondering in terms of other people that could have been on that ballot from your season that Max got chosen.
I think Max is a very big name in the Survivor community, so having him on the ballot kind of makes sense, and there were other people that, like Kelly Wentworth, that went out, I think, 5th, just like Max did. So I think having him on the ballot was something that should have been done.
Bit of a spread there, I guess. Have some of the early boots mixed with some of the later boots there. When the switch came, you separated from Tyler. Were you worried that he would spill information in regards to your idol and that maybe he would be going off there forming different alliances that come merge time would ultimately affect your relationship with him?
Honestly, I was not really worried about it. I thought that I could trust him and that that if he was there at the merge that we would be able to work together again.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any idea that Eskameka were planning on throwing challenges as well? Sort of particularly in the challenge when they ultimately would throw it to save Kelly. Was there any inkling that that's what they were trying to do?
No. None whatsoever. In fact, even when they told me after we merged and I got close with some of the blues and they told me that they threw it, I didn't even believe them.
Wow.
I'm like, oh yeah, really? Come on.
Because I guess when you watch that then too and you actually get to see it all play out, I mean, as somebody who's watched this show from the very beginning, Carolyn, is it something that you think is a smart move to ever throw a challenge?
I would never throw a challenge. I just wouldn't do it. I mean, I think that somehow it always seems to backfire when they throw the challenge. If you look at the statistics, it's not a good plan. We're in a game of Survivor to win. Throwing challenges, that's giving up people on your side. I mean, even if you can't stand the people on your side, they're still on your side.
Still numbers. There's still that vote.
There's still the numbers for a vote or two,
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioning about the statistics because we did it I think once to work out how many of these tribes that had thrown challenges had the winner eventually come from it. I think we only worked out, I think in Africa, Ethan's tribe threw a challenge, and technically now you'd argue this season now because Michael ultimately was on the tribe that threw a challenge. But besides sort of maybe those two, it's really statistically a bad idea I think to ever do it. So.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, Kelly wasn't even going to be the one going home. If we lost that challenge, Shireen would have gone home that night.
Right.
Yeah.
So they did it for nothing, essentially.
Yeah.
Wow.
Kelly's not even on the chopping block.
So is it surprising to see how much effort they go to save Kelly? And at the end, she gets sort of, I don't say sacrifice, but she ends up going basically straight afterwards after all this effort to get her in the game still. Yeah,
that's what I mean about throwing the challenge. Sometimes it like puts this little, negative energy on you, and I don't know. I thought that was a dumb move to have Kelly go that time, but I wasn't making that decision.
Well, you and Tyler, of course, were being courted sort of by both sides after the merge to sort of be involved in that decision, and ultimately it was down to Jen pulling out the idol for that. So, I mean, at that moment when Jen pulls that idol and Kelly goes home, what's the forward thinking at that point? Are you thinking, I'm screwed at this point, or you've got sort of a plan B that you can recover from that moment?
Well, the thing with that was when we got to the merge, I was all about Nagarote and staying with the no collars. But they stopped talking to me and Will. Basically, they didn't talk to us as soon as we got to the merge. They were so busy talking to everybody else. I don't know if they just thought that, we were just going to listen to whatever they said or, but this is a game about social, togetherness. And whenever you stop talking with somebody, it puts up a red flag. And so the reason why I went to blue collar was because the blue collars were all about bringing me in and talking to me. And so I think that's why, at the end of the day, the no collars were so pissed off at me was because, I didn't stick with them.
And the target being Jen at that point, do you think it was right to go after Jen? I mean, in hindsight, obviously, you'd say it would be a better idea to go after Hayley, given that she didn't have an idol. But what was sort of the drawing point behind going after Jen rather than Hayley at that point?
I think it's just that Jen was better in challenges than Hayley, we thought. And so we felt like we should get the bigger challenge threat out. If we couldn't get Joe out, who was the real challenge threat, then we would get the second one.
Now, at this point, too, Rodney and Mike started to have their little falling out and turning against each other. What was the mood around camp about Mike sort of at this point in the game, sort of pre-auction controversy?
There was no issue with Mike at this point.
Right.
But, in Survivor, everybody goes off and they talk about Final Four here and they talk about Final Four there. I mean, Mike was talking about Final Four to, a million people too. Well, he apparently heard us talking about the Final Four and was nervous or something that we were going to vote him out. We had no intention of voting him out then. I mean, Tyler and Rodney were trying to, make a case for, we should get Mike out earlier. And I'm like, stick to the plan. We've got the numbers now. Bad things happen when you start messing with the numbers. Because then you get one person to flip and all of a sudden it's a whole new game. I was like, stick with the plan. We've got a plan in place here. We've got 7 people on our side right now. They've got only 3. Let's stick with that. Let's get them out. And then we can figure out how we're going to, take out the other people to get to the Final Four that we want. So when Mike heard that, he went a little bit crazy.
It must have been an interesting situation to, I guess, keep someone like Rodney on board. Because, I mean, you mentioned, obviously, at the top that Rodney was somebody that you think you would work with. But, he seemed like a very interesting person to be able to work with for the most part.
Rodney is fabulous. But Rodney is a hard head. He's a hot head. He is all about, thinking that he's got the whole thing planned. And I'm like, settle down, hon. Settle down. You need to just step back a minute. Let's not deviate from the plan. It's not going to be good. Focus. And so, I would talk to him quite a bit about that, and he would listen, so.
Love Rodney. I've mentioned it so many times in this show that probably in my top 10 favourite characters that we've ever had in the history of Survivor, there's just nothing about that man I don't like.
Yeah, he's hilarious.
And of course, Rodney Bowl coming up as well, like this charity event.
Wait. Yes, can't wait.
It's going to be fantastic, actually. And it's great to see that, they're going out there and still doing these charity events because, with the charity events, there's only sort of a couple that are around now, whereas obviously back when Survivor was sort of the number one show, I guess you would say there was heaps of them. But it's great to see that we can still have the new ones starting. So I really hope that Rodney Bowl is something that is an annual event, I guess.
Yeah, I think it could be.
It's going to be fantastic. The night Hayley went home, did Tyler come to you and try and get you to take out Dan that night? I mean, was this ever going to be an option that night?
No. That night was all about either Haley or Shireen.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was no reason to get out Shireen at that point because Shireen wasn't really a threat. And so we felt like Haley was, the best option.
Mm-hmm. And we get then to the auction. A certain little move that Mike makes. Take us through that, because we saw obviously how the reactions and everything like that, but I guess it must have been a very tense moment at that auction when as soon as Mike did that to just blow that up and then all of a sudden, bang, target numero uno on his back, I guess.
Oh, well, yeah. So before the auction, Mike had apparently heard our 4 talking about Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
So he was already like, antennas up, he's already nervous. Then he goes to the auction, and so he wants that advantage more than anything. Well, we all do, right? I had no intention of eating. I was going for the advantage. Mike was going for the advantage. Dan was going for the advantage, and Tyler was. So, when we talked about the fact that, if we all do it together, we spend the $5, what's the big deal? We'll all get our letters. We'll still all have the exact same amount of money. It's basically just the same as having the $500. So everyone agreed. So I was like, okay, yay, this is going to be great. And then I'm the first one to jump up. I give him my money. I sit back down. I'm all excited. And everyone agreed, right? So I would have never given my money if I knew that there was a chance that wasn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat down, and when he sat down, I was livid. I jumped right up. I was like, oh, hell no, it is not going to happen like that. That is bullshit, because he already said that he was going to give his money. And I don't know what would have happened, because a lot of people texted me or IM'd me as like, do you think that Jeff would have, given you your money back? And I'm like, I have no idea what he would have done, but it would have been a long, drawn-out process because I was hot. And I wasn't going to calm down.
I can imagine. And I guess the question there that you ask in terms of Mike, that he ultimately would turn back to get the letter. Damage had already been done. If you were going to make a bold move like Mike ultimately did, would you just sit down and try and at least stay by the move? Because in the end, he's sort of shown his cards, but still gone through with the original plan. So it's kind of like he either didn't need to do it, or you should have just maybe stuck with your initial move, because it could have cost him at the end to win the game.
Well, I think that ultimately he kind of got lucky in the fact that he won all the challenges, because at that point in time, if he was losing any challenge, we were voting him out.
Mm-hmm.
Period, the end, no questions asked. So ultimately, I think the damage was done already. And whether he had the clue or not, he had to win every single challenge, because he would have been gone.
Which is the most frustrating thing in Survivor, I can imagine, at that point in the game, because it's often talked about. We've seen so many seasons where you've got this one person who's on the outs, your Aussies, your Terry Dietzes, all they have to do is win, get to the end, they win the game. They always fall just short, whereas in this season, it didn't happen. So I guess just every time he gets that necklace, you're like, fuck.
It was so frustrating, you have no idea. All I needed to do was win one more time. One more time. And he would have been gone. Yeah. But, it just wasn't happening.
What was the reaction ultimately like back at camp after that auction? I mean, we did see a bit of it, and of course, you get back to camp, you just want to read your letter, but this elephant has to be addressed, and it's got to be heated.
It was a long day. There was fight. That was the day of fights.
I can
That
imagine.
was the day of fights because the Will thing happened that day. And I wasn't even around camp when the Will thing happened. So I heard that after the fact. I only saw it when it aired. But then Mike went crazy at camp, and we were all pissed off at him. Then we were all crying about reading our letters, and, some of us were kind of sticking together, like Rodney and I, and, Dan read his letter out loud a couple times, and so, everyone was so excited about having the letters, but it took time for people to, calm down and be able to just sit and relax and read them because of all the nonsense that went on.
Don't want to gel too much on the Will situation because it's been talked to death, I feel, and we don't want to turn this into a negative interview, Carolyn, but I guess just touching on it quickly, when you see it, I mean, did it put it into perspective? I guess you would have had, no doubt, a wide variety of reactions around camp, as you said, because you didn't see it, but you're hearing about it afterwards. When you actually see it, to put it in perspective, I mean, what was your take on it?
I mean, listen, I talked to Will about it. I talked to Shireen about it. The bottom line is this. Shireen, Jen, and Mike stirred the pot. They were like, oh, well, look what happened. He's hiding. My feeling on that is he bought what he bought for $100. He got that food. He didn't have any reason to share it with us. It was all about him. Whatever you bought at the auction, you got to keep. Why should his be any different? Mm-hmm. And the fact that you would then call him out and say that he was hiding something, that's just kind of stirring the pot. So he got annoyed. Will, did he take it too far? 100%. He took it too far. There was no reason to get personal. There were other people involved. It was not just Shireen, but those two didn't get along, so it escalated. After the fact, I sat down with Shireen. I talked to her. I said, I heard what happened. Are you okay? I don't want, anybody to feel bad about this. I talked to Will. I said, Will, because he was all still hot about it. I'm going to blow this up at Tribal. I'm like, no, you're not. You're going to sit right down here. I'm going to keep an eye on you. And this is over. We're not going to deal with this again. And then it was done.
There we go. Yep. Well, as I said, don't want to gel on it. Thought we'd touch on it quickly. Because too much negativity, I feel, around this season.
Exactly.
So we're here to talk.
And the thing is, you know what? Our season was not about fighting. We had so many good times. There were couple of, 5-minute fights that happened, and I'm sure those happen on every season. But, people shouldn't think that this season was all about fighting because it wasn't.
Around this point, of course, we get the whole reward situation with Rodney and all that drama that happened there. But when was sort of the time with Rodney that you felt you were really bonding with him? Because you two seemed very close, and I don't know if it was something that was necessarily shown too much, how you guys got as close as you did.
Yeah, we would sit around the campfire and talk every single day, every night. And, he was like my little son out there, So I was always talking to him because he was from the Northeast. I'm from the Northeast, so we had a lot of that in common. Will was part of, kind of that as well. Even though he wasn't, from the same place, we would kind of all sit and talk together. And then, Rodney's crazy about food. He's just, he was very hungry. And, when we were eating, if I don't like fish, we would catch fish. I would give him my fish. I would have the rice only, so I would kind of do these things for him during the game. And then, I said to him, listen, if I win and I get to pick people, I am 100% picking you. But I never told him I was going to give up my reward.
Right.
Right? So that's the difference. I think every single one of us on the island would have taken Rodney with us. But none of that was an option.
Yeah.
Because all of the challenges were team-based. So the only way you could give it to him was by giving up your spot. And his birthday happened to be on the orphanage reward. And anyone who's a Survivor fan knows that that's one of the best rewards ever.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I couldn't give it up. I contemplated, but I couldn't give it up. And Mike and Sierra were like, don't give it up. What are you, crazy? And that was the turning point of the game because that's when I got close with Mike.
It's interesting. Well, for you, of course, ultimately in the long run, that's a good thing. But it's I guess Rodney's reaction then and to all that, we saw it. I mean, we had a good story arc there of a couple of episodes.
You didn't see the half of it.
Well, please enlighten us. How much extra did we get than what we didn't see?
Well, Rodney's crazy, so yeah, he was very heated about being alone or not eating on his birthday. And I'm like, what? You're on Survivor, like you're in the middle of the island of Nicaragua playing a game that probably 1 million people want to play. Like, stop whining.
He got his cake. He got his cake at the end of it, so
Exactly. He got like 3 cakes at the end of it because he got one at Ponderosa. He got one when we weren't even there at Ponderosa, and then he got one on stage at the finale. So come on.
He had his cake and he ate it too. 3 times.
Exactly.
But you mentioned getting closer to Mike. The reward where you're with Will and Mike, and it's sort of the deal was proposed that it would be a final 3. Ultimately, that was the final 3. But was that to you at that point your final 3, and that was what it was going to be at the end?
Honestly, Mike was a backup plan because I thought he was the biggest threat. So if he was not going to win, he was not going to be in the final 3. Mm-hmm. But if he did win, I honestly thought the final 3 would be me, Sierra, and Mike.
Right. Okay. So what if, taking Mike out of the equation, if you have ultimate control at that point, what would have been your perfect final 3 for you to be able to win the game?
I think for me to be able to win the game, it would have been Rodney and Will.
Which, again, was a near possibility at the end. But, you mentioned Sierra. I'm going to ask this to, I think, every Worlds Apart person I get on the show, because to me it seemed Sierra at the end was perceived as a threat. We didn't really get to see a lot of Sierra from our perspective in the edit. Was there a whole lot more to Sierra that we didn't ultimately see that perhaps made her a threat to actually win the game?
I think Sierra played a very friendly, low-key. Everyone loved Sierra. Mm-hmm. So she would have been a likable threat. Now, if you look at some of the immunity challenges, the one with the loved ones visit, and then the one with the balancing of that ball in the middle. Mm-hmm. She was close to Mike in terms of being kind of in second place. Mm-hmm. And almost winning. So I think Mike saw that as, oh my God, she could win a challenge and then I'll be out. So that's why he thought that she was a bigger threat.
And ultimately you want to keep someone like Sierra, I guess, looking at it that way, because she can maybe beat Mike.
Exactly.
But yourself, you were no challenge slouch either, of course, Carol. You won a couple of immunities. You're always out there. Do you think that really surprised a lot of people how strong you actually turned out to be in challenges?
I think it did, because initially, being the old one, nobody wants to give you an opportunity. I think you saw on White Collar Beach, they were already thinking about making me sit out on one of those challenges, and I went crazy. I was like, oh, hell no. I know I'm a better athlete, and there's no way that I'm going to sit out just because you're worried about somebody's feelings. We have to win challenges. This is a winning game. And every single time I competed, if I had to throw a ring, I threw the ring. If I had to hit a target, I hit the target. If I had to do anything, I didn't make anybody lose at any of those challenges. And I think initially, being the oldest person on the island, that's what people think about.
Which is interesting. And a lot of the time we see often the people that people think aren't going to do well are the ones that do really well. I mean, with so many people in Survivor history have turned out that way. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Now, the night you play your idol, I'm sure this is a question you've been asked a lot, but from my perspective too, I want to ask this question, Carolyn, not just for our listeners, but for me. Did you go into that tribal council knowing you were going to play it, or did it all come down to what was said that night? Because it was kind of edited, you had sort of looks on your face as if to say like, maybe I should play it when I wasn't really going to play it.
Well, I knew my name was on the chopping block. There was no question about that. So the only consideration was how many people were going to vote against me. Mm-hmm. So I honestly did not think that every single person in my alliance, because Mike wasn't in the alliance at that point, was going to vote against me. I didn't think that it would be, everybody. So I was, I knew that Dan was going to play his advantage. And then I was just calculating, all right, well, do I have Rodney and Will, or do I not have Rodney and Will? And then I just said, better to be safe than sorry. Because I'm like, I'm not going home with an idol in my pocket. And so I was like, there was drama because I wanted kind of to get Dan a little bit crazy because nobody knew I had the idol except for Tyler, and he was already gone. So it was one of my favorite parts to the show.
Well, I reckon, because nobody knowing, just to have that reaction and then just the looks on people's face, you must be like, hell yeah, suck on this, people.
That was so much fun. Everybody was just like, wait, what did she just do? And then you even see like Shireen on the jury and all those jury members like smiling because they're like, oh my God, this is so great.
Well, what did we have? 3 successful idol plays, didn't we, that negated the votes? And I think it was tied with another season because we thought it was a record for most, but I think somebody pointed out might have been Heroes Villains that we had 3 successful idol plays. I can't remember, but yeah, it was interesting because a lot of the times we get people playing idols, and at the end of the day, they don't really need to. But it's when we get those moments, and particularly in your situation, as you said, when nobody knows that you have it, that's what we like as viewers for the #blindside.
Yeah, exactly. Because that was a 100% clear blindside.
Indeed. And I guess just quickly on the extra vote situation, what's your viewpoint on that as a twist? Getting 2 votes that Dan had, and is this something you, as a fan of the game, would like to see continue to be in the game?
That's a big advantage. That is a big advantage because now instead of now you're just basically a 2-man person with only one Mm-hmm. So it's a big advantage. I would love to see it again because I think it's a great twist. Yeah. But it's big.
Definitely.
It's definitely big. The thing about it was, we all knew what he had because he had it in his bag. So, that was just, I think, a disadvantage for him because if he would have hid that, nobody would have known what it was. It would have been a lot more useful to him, I think.
You needed to show him some of your hiding spots, perhaps, just so he didn't have it sitting in his bag.
Exactly.
Now, at the end, of course, we get Mike's decision, forces the fire making between you and Rodney. Now, if you're in Mike's position, do you do what he did, or do you maybe just take you out? Because I guess from my perspective of that, it would have been for Mike to just vote you out straight away into the final 3. I guess he would risk losing your vote. Do you think to try and keep you on side, he made the right decision to make that a fire building challenge?
I think he, at that point, just did not feel like Rodney deserved to be there. But he definitely did not just want to give it away. So I think he was like, fight to the bitter end and see who does it.
Mm-hmm. And do you had Mike at that point changed his mind and voted you out of the game? Would that have prevented you from voting him to win?
Yes.
Okay. We had that big debate. We were like, well, hang on a minute, no, because if he votes Carolyn out, she won't vote for Mike and all this sort of stuff. Because I guess you would be furious, and given that you're the last jury member, you're all of a sudden going to be the one who's going to be the most furious, I guess.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's hard to say now what you would have done, but I don't think I would have voted for him.
Who gets the vote, Rodney or Will?
Well, I mean, if Mike voted me out, if I lost the fire challenge on my own, I would have voted for Mike.
Mm-hmm.
If Mike votes me out, I might still be annoyed. So, I don't know. I mean, it just, at this point, I would have voted for Mike if he didn't vote me out. If he voted for me to be out, I would have to know who else voted for me and then see how that works. You know, I don't really know.
It's an interesting one. Going into that final tribal council, how confident were you that you could take this game?
I actually was a lot more confident than it turned out. I honestly thought that I had Tyler's vote. I mean, I would have voted for Tyler if he was sitting over there, because although I voted for him out, he was voting for me that same day if I didn't win immunity. So, you know, that's just the way the game goes. And I thought I had a shot at Shireen. Mm-hmm. So she kept telling me she wanted a woman to win, but, you know, they didn't vote for me in the end. So
it must have been frustrating because, I mean, you know from our perspective on this show that we're big fans of yours. I mean, Noah, of course, who you spoke to on our Oscars, you know, just is the number one Carolyn fan of the Carolyn fan club, I feel. But, I mean, we sort of were sitting down watching that and we kind of get our paper out and we're like, who's going to vote for who's going to vote for who? I think my calculations, I'm like, we could have a tie here. Ooh. And then I think Noah and Paul, who was with me at the time, we were like, oh, I think Carolyn could win this by a vote, or might. We thought it was going to be like one vote in it. And in the end, it's a blowout. So,
yeah. And
also, I guess, in between filming and when it was announced, were you still on that impression that you were going to get a few votes and that you were still with a shot in that waiting period?
I honestly thought that if I didn't win, it was going to be a 4-3-1 vote.
Mm-hmm. To sort of keep it close. What do you ultimately think it was then that it was the reason behind why you didn't get more votes? Do you feel it was down to performance of Final Tribal? Do you just think they didn't ultimately see what you were doing out there when you were playing the game?
I mean, I think it was twofold. I think one is, you know, Mike's back was up against the wall pretty early on in the game in terms of the merge, and he won, you know, 6 different challenges in a row. And I think people saw that as, you know, like you're just, it's just so hard to do. I mean, there's only 5 people, right, who have ever won 5 immunity necklaces, mm-hmm. and he's one of them. So he's one of the greatest survivors ever. So I think when you look at that, I think people use that to make their decision. I also think that in the final tribal council, I wasn't as emotional, I think, as I should have been. You know, and really talking from the heart versus trying to be, you know, that tough, hardcore, you know, older woman trying to prove, oh, yes, I've done this and that. I mean, I think everyone knows what I did. They were there. But I think from an emotional standpoint, I didn't get to their emotions.
And I know we touched on it slightly in our Oscars, but that finale night, I could just imagine was extremely tough because you went into that, I guess, oh, I think I could win this, and probably thinking I could imagine if I don't win it, at least I'm probably going to get a second shot. Neither happened. If I was in your position, I would have just walked out and just broke down. I feel like that just must have been a terrible night.
I got very drunk.
That's a good way of looking at it. That's great.
Yeah, that was a bad night. It was not a pretty night, actually. Yeah. Because when I found out that I only got one vote, I was like, what? And then I was like, all right, well, whatever, I'm going back. And then I don't get back. And I knew that I wasn't getting there on the show. I knew I wasn't getting on Second Chances when he got to our kind of line in the finale. Because I knew Tasha was going to get on. Mm-hmm. And there were only 2 slots left. And I thought for sure Shireen would get on. So I was like, oh my God, I'm not even getting on Second Chances.
Wow.
Like I knew it right then and there. And I think people caught my face on film and they were like, oh my God, she's devastated. I was so upset.
Yeah. When does that approach come for them to say, hey, we've got this idea coming up, would you like to come back? They're going to be fan voted. Was that sort of an early approach during the season, or was there another moment when they came to you with that?
No, it was during the season that they had started the discussions on Second Chance. And then when they announced it to become, official, and then they told us that, Mike and I wouldn't be able to do any podcasts or really do anything media-wise. They were like, Carolyn, you don't have to worry. You've got 10 million viewers watching you every day. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I guess if you think that, which is true. But I also think that a lot of people thought I was going to win. And they didn't want to waste a vote.
Well, I know from some of our people's perspectives that was the thinking. Like, I don't know if Mike or Carolyn or you ever really factored into a lot of the voting, because I know from my standpoint, I voted for you on the pure fact that it looked as though Mike would win, and I wanted you to be back. But I know some people were like, well, yeah, Mike's going to win. One of them's going to win, so we're not going to vote for either of them.
Yeah.
Which, again, it puts you guys at a disadvantage, which, saying whether or not you're getting 10 million viewers each week, you're not getting 10 million viewers to listen to why you should be back for a second chance, whereas everybody else has that opportunity, don't they?
And, when we did that video, my video was so idiotic because I wasn't allowed to say anything. I'm not allowed to talk about my gameplay. So what could I say in that stupid video? It was just the dumbest video ever. And that was the only thing that people were seeing. And they're like, oh, wow, she's going to smile more. Great. And I'm like, well, I don't know what else I can say.
Yeah. I guess besides the fact that you're disappointed you didn't make it, what was your viewpoint just overall, though, on the cast that was chosen for Cambodia?
Oh, I think it was a great cast. I think that things happen for a reason, and you know what? I think I would have been targeted early, knowing that I just got off of Worlds Apart. I was fresh in everybody's mind. I made it to the end, so I think it might have been a blessing in disguise that I didn't get picked for that one, as long as I get picked for another one.
Well, I was going to say, do you feel as though that opportunity is going to come? And I'm guessing you're going to say yes, should they come knocking again?
Yeah, I hope they do come knocking, and yes, I will say yes.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, I'm going to get to these listener questions and wrap it up with our final 5, but just quickly, we always like an update in terms of what you're up to. Generally, this question is sort of asked to people that maybe we haven't heard from for a while, but it's only been a couple of months, I guess, Carolyn, since we've last seen you. But, what are you up to now that's all settled down, and what are the plans, I guess, for the rest of 2015?
Well, interestingly enough, I've left my job at H&R Block, and so I'm going to be looking for another opportunity, going probably back to, the Southeast, looking for work there.
Fantastic.
And then waiting for Survivor to call me again,
Just waiting for the phone call.
It's going to happen.
Well, hopefully.
Phone call. It's got to come.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting. And I guess it's also going to be interesting to watch Cambodia coming up with Shireen and Joe on it.
Wait. Yeah,
You're gonna get a lot of people like us knocking on your door again, asking you to do recap episodes. Because I know, from my perspective, I'm going to be targeting a few of you guys who sadly missed out to kind of, because I think it will add a little bit more heat to it. Because you guys are no doubt going to be thinking a lot this season. Well, that could have been me. I could have been doing that.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Now,
I'll be glad.
Now, I'll get to these listener questions, and thanks to everybody who's sent these in. And as always with listener questions, a lot of these do get answered throughout the actual interview, so not skipping over questions if people think I'm avoiding them. Alrighty. Brandon Tokar says, I'm a huge Carolyn fan and want to know, had she not been on White Collar, would she have been one of the first out or still made it to the end?
I don't think the white collar, you mean being on white collar, would have made a difference. I think it's all about, how you build the relationships with people and just playing the game.
Sure. No worries. Thanks, Brandon. Gabriel Swenson, was establishing Mama C as a nickname part of your strategy?
No, actually not. Because, the mama term can always go against you because people always think mama older, and then you don't want to always be thought of like that. But Tyler called me Mama C probably on day 2 or 3, and it stuck. And then I was Mama C, and now I've embraced it.
Is that just what they all call you still when you catch up with them?
All of them.
All of them.
I don't even think anybody calls me Carolyn.
All right, Mama C, next question. Jack Klein says, first of all, I punched the TV when you lost, and again when you didn't make second chances.
Thank you.
But question, how do you think the game would have changed had either Shirin gone home instead of Max or Mike gone home instead of Kelly?
Oh, I think it would have been a totally different game. Totally different game. If Mike went home instead of Kelly, I think I would have had a big shot at winning the game.
Now,
yeah. And if Shireen went home instead of if Shireen went home instead of Max, again, still very different game. I think it would have been more of a bromance type game there, though. Not sure I would have fared as well.
Okay, thank you for that question. Now, just looking here, Dylan, your question's been answered. Johnny, your question's been answered. Rokus, your question's sort of been answered. Let's see here. Zachary Chong, tell Mama C that she is far and away the best player of Worlds Apart, and hashtag Carolyn was robbed twice and she should be out there right now playing Survivor again.
Woo! Thank you.
Brandon, well, you answered this one essentially. Who else's votes from the jury were you expected? So you sort of touched on that. You said you thought you would have gotten Tyler's and possibly Shirin's. Was there anybody else maybe you thought you were in with a chance of getting their vote?
I thought that either Haley or Joe, that I had an option with them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because I needed 4 to win, right? So I would have needed... I knew Rodney was voting for Will, so he was out. I didn't think Dan was going to vote for me because I was the cause of him to leave the game, even though he voted for me that same night. And clearly was like, I think Mike won his vote based on that emotional apology that he gave him. But I thought I had Tyler for sure, Sierra for sure, Shireen, and then one either Haley or Joe.
Interesting. Thanks for that question. Now, RB Lidgestrom, now he's a big, long-time listener. He asked me about 1,000 questions, but I like this question here. He's asked, what was the biggest mistake you made in the game? Was it blowing off Shirin after Max's boot, not fulfilling your offer to give Rodney a reward, or voting off Tyler at that stage of the game?
I think my biggest regret in the game is not staying closer with the no-callers. When Mike got in with the no-callers, he got 4 votes right there, because Shireen at that point was part of the no-callers. So he got Joe, Haley, Jen, and Shireen right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And if I would have stuck with Shireen a little bit longer and not blew her off, I think I would have had a better opportunity to get more votes.
There you go. I just have to add this comment here from RB. Says, Noah Groves gushes like a little schoolgirl at a One Direction concert at the mention of your name. What have you done with his thousands of fan letters? Have you issued a restraining order against him, or do you feel safe that he's halfway across the world?
I love my fans.
There you go, RB. Thank you. Now, just quickly, these last two are comments, and I'll save these two for last because these ones are nice, I feel. Michael J. Depose. Now, he actually had a question, but it's been sort of half answered. His comment, though, he says, on a personal note, I feel that in Survivor history, Carolyn is probably in the top 5 greatest players, maybe even 3, to never win the game. I loved watching her game unfold and want her back ASAP. So that's Michael's. Now, this one is a long one, but I'm going to go through it quickly because it's a great comment. All right, bear with me on this one. Shannon Fixler says, in my opinion, and I know I'm not the only one, Survivor Worlds Apart was not a good season. It starts off bad, but it gets better here, Carolyn. Even though it started out well for quite a while, it was anyone's game to win. The auction episode ruined it completely on a strategical level, but even more so, CBS decided to cast a dark shadow on the entire season by choosing to focus on a number of people's bad choices and unsuccessfully try and teach us a lesson in bullying. Not to mention how they seemed to give up at some point and focus on next season while you guys were still out there, which led to a shitty reunion episode with Jeff proving to us that he's good at only one job. That being said, there was one consistently good thing about this season, and that was you. Smart, strong, and lovable. I hope you know that we, the fans, saw whatever your stupid tribe mates didn't. You are a role model to all the people sitting at home wishing to play Survivor on how to stay gracious and honourable when playing a game of deceit, and in your case, playing it with a bunch of lunatics, sans Tyler. I hope you comprehend the fact that so many hearts were broken on that cursed night of May the 20th when you didn't get the respect you deserve twice. In any other season, with almost any other jury, you would have received the check. Thank you so much for being the only reason I didn't give up on this season and on Survivor altogether. In my eyes, and in the eyes of many, you are the winner.
Oh, well, that's fabulous. Thank you.
There you go. I had to read that one out there. Thanks, Shannon. That was quite a nice comment, and started off bad, but it went good. So there you go. All right, Carolyn, we wrap up every interview with a set of 5 questions. These are just to get your vibe on a few things Survivor. No right or wrong answers, all opinion-based. And I start off by asking, what are 3 things you learnt about Jeff Probst during your time on Survivor?
Jeff Probst is hilarious. I love that. He is driven to get this show the best it could be, and we learned a lot about his eating because we asked him all those questions.
And what does he eat?
Steak.
Steak.
Lots of steak.
Right.
Yes, we were drooling over his answers.
I could imagine he would like to taunt you guys over his food choices. Just a little bit. All right, question number 2, Carolyn. What is your favourite and least favourite season in the history of Survivor?
I think I like the... there's 2 seasons that I like. I'm not good with the names. I like the Malcolm Denise season.
Philippines, yep.
And I like the Brains, Beauty, and Brawny season.
Cagayan, yep. Beautiful. Yep. Do you have one that you didn't necessarily like?
It's so funny because now that you've been on the show and you think, oh my God, our season's so much better. I never had a bad season until, I'm now comparing them to mine. So I don't really think there's a bad season of Survivor.
There's a quote at this point that I would usually bring up in regards to pizza, but I can hear all our listeners rolling their eyes at me, possibly saying it, so I'm not going to say it. All right, question number 3, Carolyn. Who do you think is the sexiest ever contestant to play Survivor?
Malcolm has been my favorite. Malcolm has been my favorite Survivor.
So that's why you're good friends with So then.
I am, yes.
You're always on the phone. So, can I come over and just hang with you for a little bit? Is Malcolm going to be home?
Well, Joe's moving in on Malcolm territory.
Well, there you go. Yes, yes, indeed. So maybe needs to get Malcolm to play again so that he's more in the eyes than Joe is. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Joey amazing. Come on now.
I mean, my Aussie's in the background going, "What about me? I'm kind of there too."
Yeah. I have a man bun too. Come on.
That's a future season, 3 tribe season with a returning player at each. It's Aussie, Joe, and Malcolm.
That's right. Man bun central. You can't leave out Joaquin.
Oh, true. Survivor Man Bun. That's the name of the season.
Yes. Survivor Man.
Question number 4. Who to you is the greatest player never to have won?
Me.
I was gonna say you can answer yourself. Come on.
Hello.
Good answer. All right. Who is your least favorite winner?
Who is my least favorite winner? I don't know. I don't have a least favorite winner. I don't even know all the winners. I mean, I don't think I could recite them all.
I was going to say you could say Mike because he beat you.
Well, yeah, but he's not my least favorite. Mike is one of my closest friends, so I can't say that. So I don't know.
That's
I don't
fine.
even. I don't think I have a least favorite winner.
It's all right. We'll go back to that pizza one. But final question for you today, Carolyn. In the history of Survivor, who to you is the greatest ever player and why?
Oh, come on. Well, listen. Sandra played twice and won twice. People might not think that she's the best player, but her record speaks that she is. So I'm going to have to go with, if I could play like Sandra and win $2 million checks both times without winning an immunity challenge and getting all those votes for her, more power to you, girlfriend. Sandra, hands down.
She just won the greatest player of all time Oscar in our 2015 Oscars, so she's still up there and very much considered in that category a lot. So there you go. Carolyn, this has been a lot of fun. We really appreciate your time here chatting about Survivor. As I said to you, we'll get you back on during Cambodia to relive the pain of nearly being on that season and talking about what could have been and everything along those lines. But we look forward to that.
I hope it rained every day. That's all I want to say.
Yes, and they're all coming home. They just got home, didn't they? So they're all sick and, just going for it. All suffering.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, Carol. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
And massive thanks to Carolyn there. Honour to have her back on the show. Of course, as she mentioned during the interview, it was on our Oscars earlier this year, but to get this full-length interview is fantastic and a lot covered there. And great to hear from her and her side of everything that went down on Survivor Worlds Apart. If you are a Worlds Apart fan, our Dan Foley interview, our 4-hour Dan Foley interview, if you don't mind, is also up at the same time as today's Carolyn interview, so make sure you check that out. And we do have some other Worlds Apart people lined up, as well as some other people too. Our Josh and John interviews from San Juan del Sur are still coming. Had some scheduling issues that we will see them happen soon, so they will still be happening, and a few other ones lined up too. So watch this space, survivoroz.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter to stay up to date. You can get your questions in. Of course, at the time of releasing this, if you are listening to this before the 24th of July 2015, you can still apply to be an Ozlet as well. Got to give that a shameless plug. If you ever want to join the crew here at Survivor Oz, make sure you head to our website, search for the post, and send in your application to survivoroz@hotmail.com.au. We want you to join our team, and we are looking forward to working with you. And we also look forward to you leaving us feedback on iTunes. Remember, that is how we hear what you think of the show, and you can rate us there as well, and subscribing to us on iTunes is the easiest way for you to, of course, stay up to date with all these interviews. Always appreciate the support, folks. Thank you very much for tuning in, and thanks to Carolyn once again. Let's close it out. My name is Ben. This has been Survivor Oz, a Tribe has spoken. We will speak to you next time on The Train.